Hi folks, thanks for stopping in and Happy New Year. I've been doing a little bit of cleaning up today around the bench and just in my gun room in general, and I came across this box. I opened it up and I find some ammunition inside. I started wondering, I wonder what this is in here for. They look kind of dented up, don't they? And initially what I thought is that maybe it was some that I had collected where people had had double feeds, which I'm sure y'all have seen before, where they get kind of scraped up from just the locking lugs. If the bolt overrides the cartridge, scrapes along it there and dents it. I started looking a little more closely because that does not really look like a typical double feed damage. That's pretty gnarly. That bullet's actually flattened. Isn't that weird? What this is ammunition that I picked up following a catastrophic failure of an AR-15 probably back in about 2013. It was during the period of shortages when ammunition was very hard to come by, and the gentleman who had this happen to him, it wasn't me, I was just nearby when it occurred, had been shooting a mixed bag of stuff he had bought various places, some of them gun show reloads. Most of this stuff here is actually varying dates of Lake City NATO head stamped brass. It appears to be factory, at least this stuff does. But he was shooting just a grab bag of just different junk that he had come across. And one of those was a little bit spicy. And what happened is, my theory is it was probably a reload that had gotten pistol powder in it somehow. We'll get to that later. It doesn't really matter. But this is what happens when an AR-15 has a catastrophic failure. And what you're actually seeing here, that flatness, is actually an impression of the bottom of the bolt carrier. Because what occurs if you have a catastrophic overpressure event is that it blows the cartridge case out, the casing fails, the bolt stays locked, it's in its locked position, and typically what occurs is that pressure blows around through the extractor. Typically it'll break the extractor or bend it very severely. Usually flows brass back into really anywhere it can flow under that intense pressure and heat. And when it gets further back, it will actually blow the bottom of the bolt carrier off and out through the magazine well. It'll blow either the magazine out or blow the floor plate off and all the ammunition goes blowing out. Typically on a PMag or something like that, the plastic shears and the whole magazine comes out, at least as far as I've seen, whereas metal magazines, typically it'll just blow the floor plate off and leave the shell, the body of the magazine in place. This one, if I recall, was a metal magazine, and the body of the magazine stayed in the rifle, and all of the ammo just blew out the bottom with the bottom of the carrier. Destroyed the rifle, split the upper receiver, cracked the lower receiver. The brass welded itself to the bolt face. It was a truly catastrophic failure, probably the worst I've ever seen the aftermath of. This was long enough ago. I had a flip phone at the time, so I don't have any pictures, unfortunately, but I'm sure you can Google that if you want to see what that looks like on the rifle. But in the aftermath of it, I had picked up the ammunition that got blown out, including that one that was in the top of the cartridge stack and has that impression of the bolt carrier. And you can even tell based on the way it is that this was on the right side of the stack in the magazine. So kind of weird. You know, some of the other ones, they're also dented up. This one was probably pretty high up in the magazine, really badly dented. This one, I don't know what happened to it. It's got powder falling out of it. But the bullet actually ended up being shoved back into the casing. You can see the tip of it down there, and it's sort of deformed. I don't know exactly why that happened. That's a little weird. But definitely a learning moment to be sure of your ammunition supply. Just because stuff's hard to get, you know, don't do something silly. Make sure that you're sourcing ammunition from a reputable place, that you know what you're getting, and not shooting stuff that might be harmful to you or your rifle. In this instance, because of the good design of the rifle, being able to vent that gas safely away, being able to fail in graceful ways, I guess you could call it, the shooter was completely safe, luckily. It could have maybe gone different because of how severe this failure was, but he walked away just a little bit shaken up. Rifle was completely destroyed, but he walked away unharmed. But let that be a lesson to be careful of where you're getting your ammunition, and if you're loading, be sure that you are keeping powder in the manufacturer's containers that are well labeled, that you're not accidentally mixing powder, that you're not potentially pouring the wrong powder from a hopper back into a container. Good practice to avoid doing that at all. If you're going to switch cartridges or switch powder types, make sure that you are clearing the hopper out well, that you don't have any little bit of the wrong powder type still hiding somewhere. Just be very cautious, because the results can be very energetic and do some pretty gnarly bad things. I think that just seeing the way that has flattened out with that energy gives you some respect for just how bad it can be. But in this case, probably pistol powder of some type in the infamous gun show reloads, if I were to guess. There was no evidence of a bore obstruction in this case, but it was 10 years ago. I don't even have any pictures anymore. Never did, really. And don't know, but learning moment. Be careful out there. Shoot safe this year, guys. Catch you next time.